Hey guys, how many of you have ever wondered what it would have been like to have been the first man to walk on the moon? Well, if that's the case, you're going to want to stick around because that's exactly what we're going to cover next on this week's bonus session of Manly Moments. Well, believe it or not, 50 years ago this month, Neil Armstrong became the first man ever to set foot on the moon. It truly was one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. And to find out more about this event, I went straight to the source. So today we are here in Wapakoneta, Ohio, the hometown of Neil Armstrong and the home of the Armstrong Air and Space Museum. To recap this historic event for you, it was Apollo 11 that blasted off in July of 1969, sending astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins off into space. Make no mistake, this was truly the greatest journey of human history unfolding right before our eyes. But since it was 50 years ago, I thought it would be fun to count down the 10 most fascinating facts about the first man to walk on the moon. Are you ready? Let's blast off. Number 10, Neil Armstrong learned to fly before he even got a driver's license. Neil Armstrong became preoccupied with aviation very early in life. At around age 6, his father took him on a ride in a Ford tri-motor airplane, and by age 15, Neil had accumulated enough flying lessons to command a cockpit. He had yet to earn his driver's license. Number 9, Neil Armstrong couldn't afford a life insurance policy. He couldn't afford a life insurance policy because his price was astronomical, pun intended. So he, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins came up with a different plan. Before their mission, they signed hundreds of autographs and sent them to a friend who would postmark them on the date of Apollo 11's launch. That way, if the event ended in a tragedy, the memorabilia would go to the astronauts' families, who would in turn sell them for money. Number 8, the rocket was humongous. Saturn V remains the largest rocket to ever successfully launch. Standing at 363 feet in height, it weighed over 6.5 million pounds. It cost over $6 billion to make and over $185 million to launch. And as you can imagine, in today's value, those numbers would be out of this world. Number 7, the Eagle almost ran out of gas. We all know that the Eagle has landed. But what you might not know is how close of a call it was. Because of some system malfunctions, Armstrong had to take over the landing process manually, leaving him with approximately 23 seconds worth of fuel left in the tank. Can't get any more manly than that, right guys? Number 6, Armstrong and Aldrin skipped their nap. Buzz and Neil were actually scheduled to nap upon arrival as they had been awake for over 20 hours. But they were so giddy to get out and complete their moonwalk that they called Mission Control and were granted permission to skip their nap. To paraphrase Armstrong, we didn't come this far to take a nap. Number 5, the door hatch may have played a role. While Armstrong was the senior astronaut, it made sense that he'd be the first on the moon. However, on previous Genesis missions, it was the commander who would stay in the craft while the co-pilot did the spacewalks. So it actually may have come down to the design of the hatch hinges. On Apollo 11, the door opened inward toward Aldrin, leaving a clearer path for Armstrong to go first. Number 4, there are very few photos of Neil Armstrong actually on the moon. This was way before the age of selfies. Most of the pictures are of Buzz Aldrin because Neil held the camera. In fact, one of the most iconic shots of Armstrong appears as a reflection in Aldrin's helmet. Armstrong told his biographer James R. Hansen, "I don't think Buzz had any reason to take my picture, and it never occurred to me that he should." Number 3, Armstrong carried a very expensive rock bag. When Armstrong surveyed the moon's surface, he collected a bag of dust for NASA to examine. Even though Apollo moon samples are illegal to buy or sell, the lunar rock bag Armstrong used to hold the samples was not. In 2015, Chicago resident Nancy Lee Carlson bought the bag from a government auction site for $995. But the apparent sale was an accident. Carlson sent the bag to NASA to confirm its authenticity. NASA responded by saying it was their property and refused to send it back. So Carlson took the agency to court where a judge ruled it belonged to her. In 2017, she put the bag up for auction on Sotheby's where it fetched $1.8 million. Number 2, the astronauts wanted to name their ship Snow Cone. The astronauts wanted to be silly with the names, but NASA shut that down and told them to get serious. The names Snow Cone and Haystack were both voted down by NASA, and the names Eagle and Columbia were chosen instead, which is good. Hard to imagine Armstrong saying, "The snow cone has landed." And number 1, Richard Nixon had a disaster speech prepared. President Nixon and his staff were well aware that there was a possibility the men wouldn't return home, so a speech was prepared in case of tragedy. It read, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice." And now one bonus fact. The astronauts actually had to spend 21 days in quarantine upon their return. When Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins returned to Earth, they got a hero's welcome. However, they had to bask in their newfound fame inside a sealed chamber. All three were quarantined for 3 weeks in case they had contracted some sort of moon disease. When President Nixon visited, he greeted them through the chamber's glass window. So there you have it, the 10 most fascinating facts about the first man to walk on the moon. Who knows, maybe it'll inspire you to be the first man to walk on Mars. Maybe not. Well, in the meantime, be sure to check out some of our other Manly Moment videos for more inspiration. And if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and subscribe to this channel by clicking the red subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And we will see you next time for another installment of Manly Moments.